On our recent trip to North Platte, we talked with UNL Extension economist Matt Stockton about decision-making during drought. Matt says a cattle producer who faces high input prices needs to think about that now rather than when it's too late. What are some things you think producers should keep in mind?
Well, you know, actually the decision-making process is probably the difference between success or failure in businesses, because the way people make decisions and how they make decisions is really, really important. And I think that what you got to consider is, number one, is you got to make sure that you are open to making a choice. You also have to understand that you have to make the choice. In other words, if sticking your head in the sand, so to speak, is, you know, something that you do or have a tendency to not pay attention, you know, say, well, it'll go away, that's not going to happen, because, you know, as things get worse, you know, things are going to compound. So you need to make decisions ahead of time and think about what you're doing. Now, those decisions need to be based on logic, they need to be based on understanding, and they need to be based as much as possible on as many facts and as good as facts as you can accumulate.
So in a situation like this, let's take a cattle producer who's trying to decide if he wants to cull even further. The difference is probably, or the game is, on one side you have trying to eliminate losses by maybe eliminating some of the herd, but the other side is it takes a long time to build that stock back up. So how do you try and make that decision? I mean, what all plays into the bottom line management?
Well, see, that's the thing, is it's not a single year decision either, because what I do this year is going to impact what I do next year. Okay, so let's say if I keep too many cattle, so to speak, or I keep all my cattle, and I end up buying tons and tons of hay or spending a lot of money on feed. That feed cost is something I have to go down to the bank and borrow. How long is it going to take me to recover from that? Versus if I sold the cattle, deferred the income on a tax deferral or something like that, or whatever my strategy was, and then come back and buy the cattle back. Which one of those is going to cost me the least, or which one am I going to lose the least money? Sometimes it's not a matter of profit maximization, it's a matter of loss minimization. Because in business, it isn't always, you know, I make profit every year. Some years are not good, some years are. So I think that's what you have to look at. You have to really be honest with yourself and say, okay, this is what feed's costing me, this is how much feed it's going to take, this is how much labor it's going to take, and this is what's going to happen. Now, there are considerations. How much is it going to cost me to get the genetics back that I had? Is it really worth it? But I think you need to be honest about that, because I think a lot of people may think that their cattle are actually better than they are or not. I'm not trying to judge that, but I think you need to sit in the mirror and really be honest with yourself about your resources, about the decisions you're making, and about what would really be best.
Do you believe this cliff is fairly steep in that this drought is one that can break you pretty quickly?
Well, the thing is, it's not a single year drought at this point. If this drought continues, and we have a continuation of the drought, it started last year somewhere around this time, and now it's continuing to go. Well, that means you have a series of bad things happening to people that depend on grass as their primary source of income, really, because you graze the grass to feed the cattle, to sell the cattle, you know, at the market. And so if the grass is not available and you have to pay tons and tons of money for feed, these are things you have to kind of stop the bleeding type thing. Now, that's up to everyone, and everyone has different resources. Some people have leftover hay, some people have meadows to graze. I mean, this is not, you know, just don't go out and call to cull. This is a decision you have to make in a rational, reasonable way, and you really have to compare it to the alternative. If I call, it's going to cost me this much. If I don't call, it's going to cost me this much. How, you know, who do I call, when do I call, and how do I call? These are all decisions you're going to have to make, and you're going to have to make it hopefully not in a panic mode. What you don't want to do is wait till 3 days before you run out of money and feed and say, okay, I got to do something with these cattle, because then you've got a problem. Because you're going to have to take whatever price the auction's going to give you. You're not going to be able to liquidate them in a. You see, so in other words, you want to make these decisions ahead of time as well.